And it's the same with Pessac Leognan. Pessac Leognan is Pessac. Why did we choose Pessac? Because Pessac is on the other side of that wood. And Pessac is famous for Aubryon, La Mission, Aubryon, and Pape Clément. Mérignac is famous only for Picque, Caillou, and Luchéal. We are not so many. And the airport, of course. In terms of wine. And then you have Talence, where you have a bit of La Mission Aubryon, which is in the part of the appellation. You have Gradignan, you have Leognan, of course, with so many chateaux. Martillac, which is a big place where we have plenty of chateaux there. Cadojac, you have Bousco, for example. Villeneuve-d'Ornon, what else? Canéjan, things like this. We are 9 cities being able to receive the appellation Pessac-Leognan. 2,000 hectares, more or less. Mostly 80% of red and 20% of white. And I think I am wrong. It's even 90% of red and 10% white. It's a small production of white. This is the only appellation, the only appellation in Bordeaux which is allowed to produce in both colors, red and white. White, dry. Here you are on the north side of the appellation. This appellation was founded in '87. It's a seas with Grave. In fact, Grave appellation was starting here, finishing at Langon. 80 kilometers, too large, two discrepancies between the south and the north. And we created a separation in '87. It was not easy, and
border.
The limit of the appellation on the south side is La Brède. You were at Castres. It's more or less the end of Pessac-Leognan and the beginning of the Grave. Castres is in the Grave, but just north of it you have Pessac-Leognan. Having said that, we are 56 chateaux, around 16 crus classés, classified gross. And this is why all the crus classés are in Pessac-Leognan and none in the Grave, which is terrible because the Grave created the crus classés in the Grave, and they have none of them inside their own appellation. All of this is not easy. The new generation in Grave is okay with that, but the old one was a little bit furious. It has not been an easy time during the two families. Anyway, it's like this. It's a kind of a divorce. It's not fun. But I was not part of it. I was not in that game at that time. The reason why we are calling this area Les Graves, it comes from the soil. Everybody told you that, the gravel soil. Gravel means little pebbles like this, these white little gravels. These little stones have been moved here, have been brought here by the river billions of years ago, Quaternary era, at a time where the globe warmed up. It's not the first time it is warming up. It has been done before, many times. And during that period, it happened a melting of all the ice on the top of all the mountains around the world. And all this ice melting produced all these sediments coming with the flow of the river, brought up here. You have exactly the same story in the Loire Valley with the little sediments, sandy and gravelly, on the border of the Grave, where you find all the top appellations around the Loire Valley. You have the same story in the south of the Rhône, nearby Châteauneuf-du-Pape, and so on. That means when you visit Châteauneuf-du-Pape, I guess you have done it in your life, and I hope you will do it. It's a marvelous part of the world. You have big stones like this. We call them in French the galets. Galets. And these large stones have been moved by the Rhône River down to these places, and it's where we produce the best wine from the Rhône. That means all these sediments brought by the rivers. It is a long story which has been done all around Europe. You have the same thing with the Rhine Valley. You have the same thing with the Loire, as I said, and the Dordogne. If you go to Saint-Emilion-de-Pomerol, you will find the same story with these sediments in the plain of Saint-Emilion, gravel and sand brought by the Dordogne, and in the surroundings of Pomerol. That means on the slope of the Pomerol little hill, you have some gravel which has been brought by the Dordogne. Same thing. Why do we enjoy these gravel? These gravel have two qualities. One is the drainage, mixed up with the sand being brought by the ocean. The ocean came here, it went up here, again during that warming period of the earth. And because here we are on a low part of the country. When you are in Saint-Emilion, you have more or less 100 meters of altitude. Here it's 35 meters. That means the water came here from both sides, from the river, la Garonne, and from the ocean. That means we were overflowed here millions of years ago, bringing these sediments, sand and gravel. This is why we have this addition of these two elements, sand and gravel. And these two bring drainage and warming power. It's like an oven. In the summer, this soil, specifically with this white stone, when they are getting the heat of the day, they reverse that heat during the night. It's a kind of a microclimate. You don't have that with clay and limestone. You know what is limestone? Limestone is? It's calcareous chalk, okay? That means these soil, calcaire, limestone, clay are what we call cool soils, whereas these soils are called warm soils. And these two different kind of soils are going to have to produce different kind of wine, and they will be adapted to different kind of grape varieties. And the grape varieties which is the most adjusted with this soil is Cabernet Sauvignon. This is why I'm showing you a Merlot grape, but that's another thing. C'est la vie. Oh, I have plenty of Cabernet Sauvignon, but that is a Merlot. I can't tell you it's a Cabernet because you are very good pro, and I'm sure you detected immediately that it was Merlot.
I can see from the far that's Cabernet.
And this is Merlot.
I can see that.
This is Merlot, and all the rest is Cabernet. C'est pas vrai. In fact, my predecessors put Merlot here, but it should be better to put Cabernet. That's another thing, because 45 years ago, because this is an old vine, 45 years ago, the logic with the choice of the grape varieties were not exactly the same as today. We are now understanding that with the global warming, the Cabernet Sauvignon for this kind of warm soil is much more adapted. The Cabernet Sauvignon is a late ripening grape variety. In other words, if you want to compensate the late ripening Cabernet Sauvignon, you need to have a soil which is warming faster during the spring in order to help the Cabernet Sauvignon to mature properly in September, October. This is why the Cabernet Sauvignon will be the king of the Médoc and the Grave on all the top the top grape the top terroir. All the first growth in the Médoc and in Saint-Emilion, in Pessac-Leognan, for example, Aubryon, have a majority of Cabernet Sauvignon in their assemblage. Yes.
But why is there less Cabernet Sauvignon here? Like in Aubryon has much less than the Médoc first growth.
Absolutely. It's true, Lafite, Mouton, Margaux are nearly 90% Cabernet Sauvignon. And Aubryon has much more Merlot, much more Cabernet Franc, and so on. Having said that, today today the tendency for first growth like Aubryon is to plant more Cabernet Sauvignon and to approach themselves to the Médocians.
Mhm.
But it's true that in the Grave things have been slower because there is a little bit more diversity in terms of grape of soils. We have some more clay, we have some chalks, we have a bit of things like this. But I must say, I discussed that matter. It's interesting what you say, because I discussed that matter with Jean-Philippe Delmas again the other day, and it's true that comparing with the generation of his father and his grandfather, you know, he's the third generation looking after Aubryon. They have changed their mind, and now they are planting more and more Cabernet Sauvignon because they understand that on these soils it's absolutely the right thing to do in order to give the purity of taste that we recognize with Cabernet Sauvignon with these soils.
And our last stop